My name is Liz Barbour, and I do these programs all over New Hampshire and Massachusetts. And for the first time this week, I drove all the way up to Burlington, Vermont, and presented up there. So if you know of a library or a garden club, or if you work for a company that has a wellness component, a wellness group, or requires you to take wellness classes, I teach wellness classes at various companies and corporations. So please feel free again to pass my information along. My website is thecreativefeast.com, and you can go there, and I have a lot of information. All of my programs are listed. All of my fee information is listed. There are recipes there. I need to be posting some of my recipes from this evening, but you can always email me, and all of that information is there. You can also go through my galleries. My gardens have been featured on New Hampshire Chronicle multiple times, New Hampshire Home. My kitchen remodel, I live in the oldest house in Hollis, built in 1744. So that is also there in a gallery. So, you know, you can have a lot of fun just kind of browsing through the website. So don't hesitate to do that. It's thecreativefeast.com. But tonight we're going to be talking about the Instant Pot. And I was asked to put this program together in last January for a library, and I have been doing it between 1 and 2 times a week ever since. So last Christmas, it was the most popular appliance on Amazon. They sold over 29,000 of them, and that may be an underestimated number because I think they ran out, which was the problem. So. But let me just clear up a few things. First of all, I am going to be jumping back and forth with techniques. But I'm going to try to break it all down to the very basics. One of the first things to know is that Instant Pot is a brand name. And then, but it's like Kleenex. It's also, you know, tissue or whatever. So if people are referring to an Instant Pot, they may think it's the whole concept. Well, there are many different brands of Instant Pots. Breville makes them. I have a Mueller here. I think Crock-Pot even makes one. But Instant Pot is the one that you're most familiar with because you're familiar with the name. Now, I have 2 Instant Pots here. 2 different models. They're pretty much the same. I will go over what is the difference and how the front, keypad looks. But I will say that having a Mueller, I bought this one so that I could have somewhat of a comparison. It's really not fair because it's only one other brand. Like I said, there are many out there. But I will say, I am a real fan of the Instant Pot, mainly because when you go out into the internet and you're looking for recipes and videos, they're all using the Instant Pot. So it's easy for you to understand when they're talking about just pushing a button versus on this keypad you have to toggle through all of the numbers, right? So that's one thing that is, in its favor. There are many others as well. But having said that, I also want to say that there are different sizes of electric pressure cookers. So these are 6-quart, which for most of us is plenty if we have, 2 of us at home, 4. If you're somebody who's a family of 2 and you love leftovers, get the 6-quart. If you're a family of 2 and you don't ever want to have leftovers, get the 3-quart. But the 3-quart is also, it's smaller, and it's really nice that you have an extra pot. So if you're making a multi-course meal and you can't get it all in one pot, but you don't need a full-size second one, you can pull that one out. Or if you're just like, well, just tonight I'm going to do a few vegetables, I'll do it in my 3-quart. That's entirely up to you. Most of us are fine with the 6-quart. I did have an 8-quart because I figured with all of the people that I see in one class, I would be doubling and tripling my recipes, which is not the case because I'm only giving out small samples. But the 8-quart is great if you have a large family and you are doubling and tripling recipes. Also, if you're somebody who is a canner, you can things. The 8-quart, of course, is bigger, so you can get more in it. So that's something to think about. But because it's larger, it takes longer to prepare a recipe. So the first thing we're going to talk about is an Instant Pot is not instant. Okay, so it was a great marketing gimmick. It's a great name. It serves the equipment well, but the food takes time. And I'll talk to you about that and why it is actually quicker to make something in an Instant Pot in some cases. So the first thing to note is it is an electric pressure cooker. So just like the pressure cooker that you put on your range, you have to get it up to pressure, okay? So in other words, it has to be completely sealed so that no evaporation is happening, no vapors are leaving, and the pressure builds up inside. The thing about the stovetop one is that you have to keep an eye on it because the temperature fluctuates, and that's when it gets that psh, 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 because it's releasing the pressure because too much is built up. The electric pressure cooker, it's all computerized, so the machine senses the temperature. It senses if you don't have enough water in here because it will never come to pressure if that's the case. And it will automatically shut off or indicate that something is scorching on the bottom. It's highly sensitive in that regard, so I consider it to be a very safe piece of kitchen equipment, and one that once you get the hang of it, and you will enjoy it. And I for 3 weeks, when I was learning how to use it, never once used my stovetop, and quite honestly could have cared less because my thing was, my gosh, what can I make in it tonight? What can I pull out of my freezer completely frozen, throw into the Instant Pot, and very quickly have something to eat, okay, because you can do that. So let's talk about, does somebody have a phone that is on? Because I do need those to be turned off. Just double check your laptop computer. Yeah.
Liz, can I ask you, what's the price point for these?
They vary. You can get them from $90 up to $150. And if you have a coupon, then they're reduced. So it all depends. This is the 7-in-1, which basically means it has 7 functions. Okay, or you can get the 10-in-1, which has 10 functions. So it depends on what you want with it. So I got a basic one here, but it does everything that I could want. It makes yogurt. It does, basically everything I could want. But then when I bought a new one, they have an egg function here. So now rather than me, turning the button to 5 minutes, I can just push egg and it does it for me. But that's if I like the eggs done to their, wellness. Thank you very much. Because it's a generic setting. So if it says poultry, it's a generic setting for poultry. But depending on what I've got in here, I might want it to do more time or less time. Okay? So this one also has a cake function. Okay? I mean, I have made cakes in my other one. You don't need this to do this, but you may like it. But if you're a canner, you might like the sterilize function. So it's just a set it and forget it. But you can also look up in the guide and it'll tell you how to sterilize something in here. So, you don't have to go all the way up to the top if you're not going to use those functions anyway. And if you're someone who's inclined to, figure this out, which hopefully tonight you will. All right? So in heating this up, when you're going to get recipes at the end of the class, so you don't have to write down the recipes. But recipes will be written, and it will say, at how many minutes at high pressure you're going to be preparing something. Okay? So the first dish we're going to make, I'm going to make a chicken dish, and it says to cook at high pressure for 10 minutes. So you may be thinking, wow, that's great. This only takes 10 minutes to cook the chicken. Well, that's not the case, because the contents of what's in here, now every Instant Pot comes with an inner pot. You cannot cook without this pot. You can't cook it in here. You'll ruin it. Okay, you have to have this. So everything, every item, food item that is inside here when you seal this up has to be heated up to a certain temperature to reach high pressure. All right, so on the stove top, if you were to bring something to a boil, it boils at 212 degrees. You don't reach pressure until you can get it up, the contents up to 245 degrees. And you can only do that if this is sealed in and nothing, no vapor or anything is escaping. So what we have to do, the first part of your cooking, so I split it into 3 parts. The first part is getting the food in here, the liquid in here, whatever, to reach 245 degrees or high pressure. Okay? So that's the first part of your cooking. If your food is at a, close to room temperature or whatever, it takes between 5 and 10 minutes, sometimes 15 minutes to reach high pressure. Then once it reaches high pressure, it will indicate to you, and you'll see that today, then you get that 10 minutes of cooking at high pressure. Okay? So say it took 15 minutes to reach high pressure, then my recipe says it will cook at high pressure for 10 minutes, so that's 25 minutes. Then there's the release. How do I get the pressure out of there? Okay? So most recipes that cook for a longer period of time, that are pretty stable once you cool them down, those will use what's called a natural release, and typically it's 10 minutes. So that means that the machine shuts off, or the heat shuts off, and now, without you even noticing, it will start to release the pressure. It will come out the valve. You won't even see it. You won't hear it, but you got to leave your machine for 10 minutes. You can't open it anyway because it takes 10 minutes to release the pressure. Then there's quick release, and that's used for things like vegetables, right? Because we don't want vegetables to cook for too long. Once they're done, they're done. You got to get them out of there. So you hit quick release, and that's where you turn the valve and you hear that psh, and it lets out all the pressure. And we're going to do one recipe with that, and it takes a few minutes to do that. But once that's done, you can get it out and you're done. So we're doing a vegetable today. That will be a quick release. Okay? So if we have a natural release, we have 15 minutes to get to pressure, 10 minutes at high pressure, 10 minutes at natural release, right? Now we've got what? 35 minutes, right? So that's about the time that it takes to prepare your chicken. Now, that can vary. How can that vary? The only variation in that 3-part heating process is how long does it take to get to pressure. So if I put in frozen chicken, it will take longer, right? Because it's got to thaw and then heat and then reach pressure. Okay? If I put in, say I put in a roast and I put it in one piece versus cutting the meat up into 1-inch cubes, right? It will take longer for the solid piece to reach temperature, to reach pressure, over cutting things up into 1-inch cubes. Do you have that concept, right? So if you're somebody who wants to make something faster, cut everything smaller.
Can you brown it first?
You can, yes. So that's another function, and we'll get into that. First thing I want to do is I want to get my first dish started, okay? And then we can go on to the next ones, and we'll talk about each of these functions. What you're talking about is sauté. And that's what sets the Instant Pot apart from a slow cooker. Okay, because you can't do that in a slow cooker, can you? So another advantage of your Instant Pot is that you use fewer cooking, you don't use another pan, you do it right in there if your recipe calls for that. Okay? All right, so let me get our chicken ready. So I'm going to do an Instant Pot now and later Indian butter chicken. Okay, and it happens to come from my favorite cookbook so far, and I'm going to get her other one. Now, you will have I have a sheet here that says resources. So the book is there. The information is on the recipe because this recipe is hers. And it's Vashi Petri. She's an Indian chef. She actually is, she's a statistician, which is interesting because then she's very precise in everything she does. She has a phenomenal website, unbelievable videos every step of the way. And her videos are very precise, and she doesn't waste your time because she's not that kind of woman. She's from Texas. She has a wonderful Indian accent and ends every sentence with y'all. So, but what's interesting is her website is called twosleevers.com. And I was like, well, why is it called that? That's an interesting name. Both she and her husband had the sleeve operation, right? So they had been suffering from type 2 diabetes. She has other autoimmune issues. And so they had the surgery. So they've gone on into a keto lifestyle, which is low carb, high fat lifestyle. So I found her because of the Instant Pot, but then started reading about this low carb lifestyle and decided for my husband and myself that we would give this a try. I had wanted to lose 20 pounds for I can't tell you how many years, and was absolutely able to do that and love all the food and never feel denied. So if you're interested in understanding more about it, the great thing is her books explain all of that. So this recipe is a keto recipe. It is a low-carb recipe that you will absolutely love. Then we're going to cheat because I've got carbs here. But you're going to enjoy this, okay? And so I do, talk about that a little bit. And if you have any questions after class, you can ask me about that. But her book is fantastic, and that's where I've got this recipe from. But she doesn't only do Indian food. She does Southwestern. She does all different kinds of foods. So you'll never get bored with what she has to share with you. So we're going to start this. The way she writes her recipes is that you put your ingredients in the pot in order of their appearance on the recipe, which makes it real easy. Now, rule number one, when you're cooking with the Instant Pot, well, first, this is rule number one. Don't forget this. The other thing is you cannot reach pressure and you cannot cook in this unless you have at least 1 cup of liquid in here. Whether the liquid comes from water you add, broth you add, in this case, we're using a can of diced tomatoes. You could use plum tomatoes because there is liquid in here, but there's also liquid in tomatoes, right? We're cooking with chicken. Chicken produces water when it cooks. So together, they give you at least 1 cup of liquid, okay? You need that to reach pressure, all right? So I am going to prepare for you later butternut squash. Now, butternut squash does produce water, but it doesn't produce enough to reach high pressure. So I need to put a cup of water in the bottom of the Instant Pot and then put my squash in there. And then together, they will produce enough water to bring it to pressure. How are we on that point? Good? Okay. All right. So we have that. Then we have our garlic. So the other thing about the Instant Pot is the unbelievable intensity of the flavors that you're going to get. Because nothing's evaporating. You're not losing flavors. And then when you're adding seasoning, there's an intensity of the building of the flavor through the seasoning that you're adding. Okay, so that's something to keep in mind. Now you can crush this garlic, you could put it in whole. I'm just slicing it. It really doesn't matter because in the end, we're going to use our immersion blender to blend it all together. Okay? All right, so we have that. Then we have our ginger. So you always when you cook, use fresh ginger. When you bake, you use dried ginger. Okay? Fresh ginger when you cook because the aromatics and the flavor will be more intense. There's a pepperiness to ginger that really adds to a recipe. In a pinch, if you didn't have this, sure, you could use that, but I want you to really like this dish, so use fresh ginger. Now you buy it like this. You can buy it in as big or as a little piece as you want because they sell it by the pound. If you're not somebody who uses ginger a lot, go ahead and cut this into 1-inch pieces, put them in a Ziploc bag and stick them in your freezer. And then when you pull it out, you can just thaw and you can chop it up very easily. Okay? So we're just going to take off a nice knob of this. And, you know, my feeling is that, you know, the more ginger, the better. But that's just me. And since I'm cooking today, that's you too. Okay? But you're going to get a nice, wonderful flavor. So I'm just taking the back of my spoon. The skin on here is feels to me a little thick. Sometimes I get ginger and it just is like, oh, the skin is so thin, I'm not even going to bother to peel it off. So that's entirely up to you. I do like to show people that, you know, a nice, easy technique for this. You don't have to get out your peeler. You just take a spoon and it literally rubs right off. Okay? So we've got that. And then I'm just going to go ahead and slice this up and give it a rough chop. And the reason I do that is with ginger is very fibrous, so it takes a little while to break down in here, and I do want that flavor to really come out. So I'm just going to give it a rough chop. And toss that in. Oh, that's way overboard. All right. I'll give you a break tonight, but I would add it all.
I'll put it in.
Oh, right. I just needed one to say go, go, go. Okay. That's right. Yes. Okay. Now come the spices. So this is an Indian dish, but it doesn't mean hot. Okay? Indian food doesn't have to be hot. It's flavorful. It's very aromatic. In following this particular author, she has introduced me to a lot of different pieces of equipment for the kitchen that I never knew I needed, right, until then. Actually, once you get the Instant Pot, there's a lot of things you're going to discover. Oh, I need this, and I have to have that, and I can't do it without this, and you're going to have a lot of fun buying things. But you don't have to buy any of them because you can use very simple equipment to go in here, and I'll show you that. But this is a fun thing that I have. This is actually an Indian spice box, and I'll bring this around for you. And basically, what it is it's a combination in individual little containers of many of the traditional Indian spices that I would need at one time. So I don't have to go to my pantry and pull this and that and then put it all back one by one. They're all in here together. And so whenever I need to make something, I just grab the spice box and then I put my spices out. So this is something that you can get on Amazon. I think I paid $40 for it. It's got a clear cover, lid on top. The flavors don't mix. You know, people worry, oh, does one influence the other? No, they don't. And they stay nice and fresh because the whole thing is sealed. These are dried spices. The seeds I buy whole, and then I have a grinder. It's actually a little coffee grinder just for spices that I use. So you don't even have to spend a lot of money there. But they're all of the spices are here, most of which you can buy at an Asian market. I would not buy them at the grocery store. You pay way too much money at the grocery store. So if you have an Asian market in the area, you know, go, and sometimes they're in smaller packages. And if you can't get them there, there's a spice in here. It's a spice mix. It's like a curry in that it's many different spices together. It's called garam masala. I just bought it on Amazon. Now, she has a recipe in her cookbook to make her own, which I have done, but I use it so often I keep running out. So I was like, oh, I'll just buy a nice spice mix. And some are very good. So Anyway, that's what I did. And then I was smart in that I labeled my top so that I don't get lost in my spices, because that's easy to do. So there we go. All right. So we're going to use a teaspoon of turmeric. Now, if you've ever wondered, well, where will I get, decent turmeric? Home Goods, TJ Maxx and Marshall's, believe it or not. Turmeric is a very popular spice right now. People are using it as an anti-inflammatory. So it is readily available there, and I found that the prices are pretty good. So you can get that there. And then this has a cayenne pepper, but I'm using a chili powder. It's not too spicy. And then we have paprika, and I got my paprika from Penzeys online. There is a store in Arlington. Yeah. And then there's kosher salt. And then the garam masala. Okay, so that's that spice blend. And then ground cumin, which is one of my favorites. Okay, so now I've got all of those spices added in here. And very easy. And now I'm just stirring it up. And in just a minute, I'm going to walk around with this for you so you can see. Okay, and then the final thing that I'm going to cook in this pot is our chicken. So I am using a boneless, skinless chicken breast. So I'm using boneless, skinless because if I use bone-in for this demonstration, then I'd have to be picking out the bones and, it'd just be a waste of time. But remember this, if I did bone-in, it would take longer to cook, right, because they're denser. So I would just add a couple minutes on to that if you want to use bone-in. Will the flavor be more intense? Well, yeah, because you're cooking it with the bones. But will you miss that? Not necessarily. I've been doing it this way since I started, and I love it, so don't worry about it. But here's the thing. You could use boneless, skinless chicken, but why? It's so flavorless. There's no good fat on it. They're not showing that that is having any beneficial effect on our health. What they're finding now is that what we're missing is the really good fats that satisfy our hunger so we don't overeat. So that's why I use boneless, skinless thighs. They are more flavorful. They're the darker meat. They're the richer meat, and they leave the fat on. So I will use that anytime, okay? So go ahead and use the boneless, skinless thighs. Plus, they're a lot less expensive. So you definitely should, you'll find a lot of benefits in that, okay? So these are the thighs, and when I take them, because they're the thighs without the bone, when you open them up, they're very thin, right? If you put in a chicken breast, they're thick at one end and thin at the other. So if you're going to use the chicken breast, you need to cut it into chunks, okay? But this, I can just drop them in as they are. Now, I'm going to double the amount of chicken in the recipe for today's demonstration. And you can do that anytime because the title of this recipe is Now and Later. And what that means is it makes enough sauce that at the end, you'll have sauce left over anyway, and you can pour it on vegetables the next night or fish another night. You could freeze it. But because there's so much extra sauce, you can also double up the chicken in here, and you don't have to double up the sauce. So that's what I'm doing. Now, because I'm doubling up the chicken, it'll just take a little bit longer to reach temperature, right? So in that goes. I have a little bit left because I got a little heavier bag, and I will freeze that. Okay, so our chicken is in there, our seasonings are in there, and I'm going to go ahead and get this started. So this is what it looks like.
Yep, good.
Okay, now when I'm done, when this is finished, you will see that the sauce will at least double. Plus, remember, this is called butter chicken. What do you think that means? There's going to be butter in here. Now, I won't add the butter until the chicken.
Do you have any liquid in there?
It's the can of tomatoes so far. But the chicken will produce enough liquid in it. When we're done, that's when I'm going to add the butter. If I added the butter now, it would just be a big greasy mess. But when we're done, I'm going to take the chicken out and I will puree the sauce, and then I will take my cold stick of butter and stir that in. And then, I'm going to add heavy cream. Okay? So remember, the recipe is a keto recipe. That means low carb, high fat. If I take carbohydrates, if I reduce the amount of carbohydrates in my diet, I need to replace them with something else. And in our food pyramid, the fats are way up here and the carbohydrates are all right here, right? So if I'm reducing those carbohydrates, I can increase the fats so that I am satisfied, and I will then ultimately, my cravings will go away. I don't know about you, but I felt like I spent years and years just being hungry all day long. Like, what am I going to eat next? What am I going to eat next? When is it going to be? Is it almost time for me to eat? And I realized it was it was from the sugar and the carbohydrates, the starches that I was consuming. It's got an addictive quality to it, and they're actually comparing it to heroin addiction in our constant need to feed. So the idea that the food pyramid was supposed to make us thinner, and this, of course, became popular in the 1960s and 70s and all the way through, I don't think it worked, did it? Okay, because our obesity has risen unbelievably. The number of type 2 diabetics, unbelievable. Heart disease, did it go away? It didn't. So something's wrong, right? And the interesting thing is if we can change our diets, we can help ourselves. We don't need to take a pill, and we don't need to go see a doctor because we're in control of what we're putting in our mouths, right? So if I can just cut down on my carbohydrates, I can make a huge difference for myself, and that's exactly what I did. Okay? And the other thing is now I can eat butter. I can eat bacon fat. I can eat lard. I can eat coconut oil. Okay? Gone are vegetable oils. Heavy cream in my coffee. Okay? Bacon. All of that stuff that I was forbidden to eat before, now that I can have it, I can consume that. My body can run off of that fat, which is what a keto diet does. It's 5% carbohydrates, 20% protein, 75% fats. Now, I'm not going that route just because that's for me, it would be a hard thing to maintain, but I cut out all pasta, all rice, all bread, unless I bake an apple pie. And then because I didn't have a lot this week, I can have a piece. Do you see what I'm saying? So there are choices we can make. So let's get this started. Now, you will see here, you see that I have all of these buttons available, and there is a poultry button. But like I said to you, these buttons are pretty generic. So I am going to manually set this, which is why you don't have to have all of these buttons, because you can manually set your time, your cooking time. And so it's very flexible for you. All right, now, I need to seal this up in order for this to come to pressure. There is a plastic rubber seal right here, okay? So it comes out when you want to wash at night. You know, when you're done cooking, you want to pull that out and throw it in the dishwasher. That way, you know, because this is going to be, all these spices, they're going to kind of, get into the seal, and it'll make it smell like Indian food. So I want to clean that so that tomorrow I can bake a cheesecake in here and it won't taste like Indian food, right? Or I can purchase these separately in colors, and I can say these will be for my sweet things and these will be for my savory things. So you can do that too. And they're interchangeable with the different machines. So this is in place. Now I need to seal this. So the Instant Pot has the markings here and here, so where it will grab a seal, you know, where you put the lid on first. Okay? So now did you hear that sound? Okay. So when I put it on, it tells me, okay, the lid is on. And then when I go to lock it, it tells me it's closed. Now it's not sealed because there's still no pressure in here yet. Once it reaches pressure, just before it does, you're going to see I'll explain to you what's going to happen here. There's a little locking mechanism at the back that will, from the lid, it'll come right out into like a hole and it will lock it in place. So when this reaches pressure, you cannot open it, nor should you try to. But you will know when it's in pressure. It won't be a surprise. You just, got to pay attention, right? Okay. So when we come to pressure, what's going to happen is the pressure will build up, and then this little button, do you see that little button that I'm pushing up and down? That's the pressure valve. That will come up, and now we know it's reached pressure. That's a good indicator for us, okay? Now, this is the sealing button. So I either put it on venting or sealing. It will not reach pressure unless I have it on sealing, okay? Now, I put it on sealing, okay? Now, I'm going to go ahead and set this. So I don't want to get too specific because you may buy one that doesn't have this one button. It doesn't say exactly this. So read your manual. I know I'm one who opens the box, takes it out, and I'm off to the races. I don't forget the manual. It's so easy. I know what I'm doing. Just read the manual because things will happen or not happen, and you'll be like, well, why didn't it do that? But if you read the manual, you'd know. Okay, so do give it that time. All right, so we're going to hit pressure cook. Okay, does that say 8? Yes. All right, I'm going to take it up to 10, right, because this recipe says 10. So what I've done is now it says 10, which means it knows once this reaches high pressure, I will cook for 10 minutes. Now, what does it say? Just on. Okay, so now what's happening is it started, okay? So now remember, we have that first segment of time of getting this up to pressure. So it can take about, I'm going to guess it's going to take about 10 minutes, all right? The Instant Pot heats from the bottom, okay? A slow cooker heats from the bottom and the sides. So this will come from the bottom, and that's going to be important for our next demonstration because there's a concept that we're going to be talking about that is probably new to a lot of you, but it is an exciting thing to know about how can I cook more things in a pressure cooker. All right, so right now you're saying, well, I mean, that's really nice, Liz, but I can do this on the stove, right? So why should I go ahead and get an Instant Pot? Because really what I could have done is I could have also cooked rice in here with my chicken. Well, geez, Liz, isn't that like if I did a slow cooker, right? Because I can cook chicken with rice in a slow cooker. But then it's chicken with rice. The rice tastes just like the chicken. If you cook it in here in a separate container on top of the chicken, I'm cooking the rice and the chicken at the same time, and the rice does not taste like the chicken. It's separate. It's like a side dish. That's when you start to really capitalize on the benefits of the Instant Pot. And that's what we're going to do in our next demonstration. Okay? So I can already hear what's happening in here. Now, just before this starts, just before it reaches high pressure, as it's getting up there, you're going to notice that there's going to be steam coming out of that little pressure valve. because the pressure is building, but the pressure valve hasn't fully engaged yet. The pressure will push it up. But as it's pushing up, you'll notice that there's some steam coming out. Okay, this is where if you didn't read your manual or you didn't watch a video, you'd be like, oh, what's happening? Something's not sealed, and you may not, you know, it might make you very nervous. All that is happening is that it's almost at pressure. That little guy is going to come up, and as it does, it pulls some of the pressurized vapor out with it. And then it'll seal and it'll be completely silent. When that happens, when it reaches high pressure, this thing will shift from on to 10. It'll begin a countdown. When you see that the number that you put in appears here, you will know it's at high pressure, and now it's got 10 minutes, and it'll start 10, 9, 8, and all the way down to 1. When it is done, the heat will turn off, and it will, on the Instant Pot, start to count up. Because remember, we have one more segment. It's the natural release. So it'll say LO for low pressure, and then it'll say 1, 2, 3. So you'll know. So say you walk away, you knew it, you know, you hear the beep from the other room. Oh, it's done. You come back in, and you're like, oh, how much more time at natural release do I have? You'll be able to look and say, oh, 6 minutes. You know, 6 minutes have passed on natural release. I've got 4 more to go. So it's a really great in that it helps to help you along. Now this particular one I got because you can't really see it, but there are 2 little icons here. One is the Instant Pot. It's this pot with the flame under it, and the other one is the Instant Pot with a P. So the one with the flame is telling me I'm getting up to pressure. When it reaches pressure, that will drop off, and the one with the P will remain, telling me it's at high pressure. Because, to be honest, what you guys really want to do right now, you're wondering, what's happening in there? I wish I could see. You can't. But this model has a little kind of an indicator to help you a little bit more. Okay? All right, now, it still hasn't come to pressure, so I can still move this. Once it reaches pressure, I won't. Okay, so now we're going to go on to our next thing. Now, so I told you, this is a concept that I think you all ought to take advantage of, and that is what's called in-pot cooking. So I'm going to be able to prepare 2 things at one time that will not taste like each other. 2 side dishes, for example. Or if I did this when I first was practicing this, I made fish and vegetable at the same time, and the vegetable did not taste like the fish. Okay? So, but you could do chicken at the bottom. When I had the 8-quart, I was doing this dish with rice on top of it in the same 8-quart one. Okay? So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do lentils in the bottom and then a rice dish on top so that you can understand the concept, okay? So in here, now I had all of my recipes for you tonight and then promptly left them on my kitchen table. So the library, I did have a few extras stashed in my drawer of the chicken dish and the rice dish, but I didn't have the lentils. But I did nothing special to the lentils. You can get basic recipes when you get your Instant Pot. They do come with recipe books. There is also an application for your phone or your iPad for Instant Pot, which I have found incredibly useful when I go to the grocery store. Okay? So, that information is there for you. And if you really want the lentil recipe, you can email me, and I'm happy to send it to you, but I am telling you, it's nothing special, okay? So, can you see there's steam coming here?
I was going to say, I just told my mom, I'm like, you can smell that.
Yeah, okay. So remember how I told you that right before it comes to pressure, it's going to start to do this steam right? But it hasn't done anything yet. So it's almost at pressure. I don't think, can you hear it? Okay, okay. So pretty soon that's just going to come to a dead stop. Okay? All right, so I am doing, these are green lentils. I want to pass them around because most of us buy the brown lentils, and they're perfectly fine, but they get very, in my opinion, mushy, which is great if you're making a lentil soup, but I like my lentils to hold together and have a little body when I cook them, okay? So I am using the green lentils, all right? They also give me a few extra minutes of cooking time. Now, you'd think pot and pot cooking will save you time, but it's also a way to slow down time. And so that's a tough concept to get. And I was just watching a video today about that. See, I still get like, when is that going to come to pressure? And I have to learn to be, this is the part where you have to be patient, because you know it's about to happen, and why is it taking, it seems like it's taking longer than it did the last time. Huh?
The pressure one.
Okay. I just gave it a jiggle.
Yeah, sometimes you have to jiggle it to get the
Yeah. But most of the time, no. Like I just cooked in this today, and I didn't have to do that at all. Okay, so it's silent, and in just a few minutes, you're going to, like maybe a minute and a half, you're going to see it start to do its count, okay? All right, so in here, I've got, my lentils are 2 to 1, so 1 cup of lentils to 2 cups of water, all right? So I've got my lentils in here, and I'm going to pour them in here. And then I cook these with a little bit of salt. You could put other aromatics in here if you wanted to. Okay. But I'm just going to do it with the water. Okay, so that's all that's in there right now. Now comes for the pot-in-pot cooking. So here's where you can start buying little accessories too, but you don't have to have them. So this is a trivet, okay? And so the trivet, every Instant Pot comes with a trivet like this. So the point of this is it's got little feet so that it lifts things up off the bottom out of the water for certain items. So when I'm doing pot-in-pot cooking, the pot, I want it to rest on something. So if you're cooking eggs too, you might put this in and put the eggs on top. Or I put my eggs in this, but you see the feet, okay? And I'm going to cook my butternut squash in here, but there's the feet. So the butternut squash is not sitting in the water, because my experience says that butternut squash produces a lot of water, so then it gets all mushy if it's also sitting in water. So that's been my experience. All right, so we're going to do the rice. So this is actually part of a set of stackable egg trivets. Okay, don't buy this. It's a pain in the neck to do, and the only advantage of this is now I have trivets that are at different heights. So if you're going to do the pot and pot, I would recommend these trivets because one is slightly taller than the other. And that matters because these pots, you can't overfill, you don't want to overfill them. They can only be filled up to 2/3, and there's actually a mark on the inside of the pot that says basically 2/3 full, and don't go over that because it won't come to pressure. And that's happened to me in class where I've gone slightly over it with my pot and pot cooking, and they just don't come to pressure. And it's been very frustrating. Is it? Okay, good. So anyway, so putting these guys in, you have to keep an eye on that 2/3 mark to make sure you don't go above that. And so sometimes I've actually been like, well, the trivet's not going to work, but if I put this container in right on the chicken that's cooking in there, I come in below the 2/3 mark and it'll reach pressure. Okay? It's something to play with, okay? Now, we have, is that the right? Okay. All right, so now I've got my lentils in here with their water and some salt. Now I'm going to do my rice dish, okay? So I'm going to put my trivet in so that my little pan of rice doesn't sit in the lentils, okay? And remember, this is pot-in-pot cooking. Now this pan, it comes in a set of 2. They stack on top of each other. You don't need this. If you have like a, any metal or aluminum pan that you can cook in the oven, you can use in here. So if you have an aluminum, thank you. Yeah, all night long, you're going to keep throwing words to me, the two of you. So that's perfect. Yes, if you have a bread pan or whatever, you can, and that'll fit in, you can use that in here. You don't have to buy this set.
Can you use like the tinfoil pans?
Yep. Yeah. I know. Yeah. Oh, because then what? You can throw them right away too when you're done. Oh, you will like that. That's that girl. Okay. So this also comes with a lid. If you don't have a lid, just cover it in foil.
Put holes.
Yep. Okay. So here's how this concept works. Okay. So say I was cooking the chicken, which takes 10 minutes, with my rice, which say takes 5 minutes. You'll be like, well, Liz, how can you, the rice is going to come out overcooked because the chicken takes 10 minutes. Oh, and there's that heating up time. Remember, it's got to get warm, right? It's got to reach a high temperature. So that's actually cooking time. So how can you do that? So here's where the concept where I said earlier, it's like slowing down time, not making it faster when you do pot-in-pot cooking. So here's how it works. Remember I told you before, the heat comes from the bottom. So if you're doing pot-in-pot cooking, you put the longest cooking item on the bottom, right? So if we were doing it in the chicken needs to go on the bottom. So that will be in direct contact with the heat for the longest. And then when that temperature comes to the rice, then they will cook in the same, now they're both at high temp, now they're both gonna cook for 10 minutes. And you're like, yeah, but Liz, that rice still, it only takes 4 minutes and now you're adding all of that extra time onto it. So again, the idea that it's at the highest point in here that I can, and then when I cover it, that slows down the cooking too, right? Because it's not exposed within the high pressure. It does have the temperature, but it's not overexposed in that high temperature environment. It's kind of sealed off from it. So if I put the holes in it, I'll have, it will cook quicker. If I completely seal it with one of these that doesn't have holes, now it can sit in there for longer without overcooking. Okay, so let me get my rice started here. So now rice in the Instant Pot cooks differently than it does on the stove, because remember, it's not just the water that's in the rice, but it's also the water from the beans in here, so there's high pressure. So when you cook rice in the Instant Pot, it's 1 part rice to 1 part water. Yes. But fortunately, she has a video on why that is, so it's great. But it's because there's all of this, the moisture and the steam from the Instant Pot that is adding to it, okay? So I've got 2 cups of basmati rice, and now I'm adding 2 cups of water. And then this recipe I'm doing for you is a fun recipe. It's a coconut lavender rice, which you have the recipe for here. So this is lavender from my garden, but if you wanted to use thyme instead, you could, dried thyme, that would be very nice, but I happen to have lavender, so I'm adding that. And then just a quarter cup of coconut milk. So you want to get canned coconut milk, and you want to get the coconut milk that has the most fat in it because it's going to have the most flavor in it. Okay, so when you go to the grocery store, you take out, if you're looking at the shelf and there are two different types of coconut milk, you want to shake the cans and choose the one that makes the least amount of noise. Right, it's thicker, it's got more fat, it's got more meat to it. Okay, so that's in there. All right, and now I'm going to go ahead, and I'm not going to cover this because remember, they're going to take about the same amount of time to cook because I've raised it up off the floor. I'm going to go ahead. I have to put this on sealing. Now, I'm going to manually set this. I got to move this back. Sorry. Okay, so this is a manual, and then I'm doing a plus to get up to my cooking time. I'll go 7 just to see what happens. What the heck? Okay, so now the beep goes off. We've done our 10 minutes, and now it's going to naturally release for 10 minutes. So now the last thing I'm going to put in is my vegetables. All right, so here we have the concept of we're just doing one dish in here, right? Here we have the pot cooking. It's going to take a few minutes for these to heat up, but once they do, it's only going to take 7 minutes. And then I practiced this today. I'm going to do a natural release for only 4 minutes and just see how that goes. It seemed to work for me earlier today. Now I have my butternut squash. So I did a recipe earlier this week. It was a chicken recipe, and what they had to do is you put the chicken at the bottom, cooked it for 10 minutes, did a quick release on the pressure, and then put in your vegetables on top, sealed it back up, and brought it up to pressure for 5 minutes. Okay? But I'll tell you, those vegetables were incredibly mushy because they've been sitting in water. It was, I was very disappointed. And it was an Instant Pot recipe, so that made me mad. So anyway, but, maybe I'm too picky, maybe, whatever. But what I could have done is if I had cut the pieces of the butternut squash larger, maybe it worked. Maybe I cut them too small. So what I also could have done, what I did for my class the next day was I put the vegetables, it was butternut squash and fennel, in my little container and cooked it on top of the chicken. When it came time to add it in, then I cooked it on top of the chicken so that it didn't blend in. So again, with these vegetables are very time critical. So I want to get them out of there. I don't want to do a natural release on these. So I want to get them out of there. So let's get them in. So first things first, there's a cup of water in here. Okay? Now in goes my vegetable basket. I recommend this one or one like it. I can't remember the name of this one, but get the one for the 6-quart. I fill it with my eggs when I do my hard-boiled eggs. The shells literally fly right off of them when they're done. It's great. So this is a great little basket because it's got plastic on the handle so you can lift it out with your hands and you don't burn yourself. Okay, so look how big I cut my butternut squash chunks, okay? Because I didn't want them to be mushy. So I'm going to give this a try at this size. Some are larger than others, just so we can have an experiment. And we're going to go ahead and there are vegetables, so we're going to go ahead and now I'm going to come back and go through all of these buttons while the things are finishing up. But this particular pot, this is a Mueller. while I like their other small appliances, I'm not a fan of this only because I've had the Instant Pot. Now the Instant Pot, you'll notice the keyboard, the keypad is just push a button. In here, I have to toggle through all of them to get to all of them, because what they did was they're like, well, we're going to give you 18 presets versus, I don't know what's on there, 7 or 8. But the only way they could do the 18 is if you toggle through all of them. So it depends on what you want. I find this to be a pain in the neck, but I'm teaching a class almost every night with it. So you may not find it to be a pain in the neck, okay? So we're going to put this on. Now, here's the other thing. This did not make that happy little noise that I like. And it really could care less if I sealed it. There's no little dinging or binging or anything. So I'm always disappointed with this one. But I have it on airtight. They call it sealing. And I'm going to go to, so there's a vegetable here, a vegetable button. So I'm going to go through, pass through the meat and the poultry. And this says, what does that say? 5 minutes. And I'm going to go down. Why won't you go down? Let's see. I think it'll start. Oh, I went all the way past it. 15, 3, 4. And then I have to literally press start. Now, I don't know if you noticed, when I picked how many minutes it would cook at, I just left it. I don't have to push a start button. It starts automatically. In this, you have to push a start button. You get used to it. Okay? All right. So, all right, now I want to go through the different settings. So, on the, I can't read this. It's too, I'm going to have to come around. So, okay. So, most of the presets on the Instant Pots, they heat up in the same manner. What does that mean? That means they heat from the bottom and they heat in the same amount of time, the same amount of force, but some do not. So for example, there is a soup and broth button. It cooks differently from the other buttons because when you make a broth, like a chicken broth, you don't want it to be cloudy, right? So if you've ever made a chicken stock or a chicken broth or chicken soup, if you let it boil, it'll be cloudy, right? Because it's kind of, bringing out all of the
Starchy stuff.
See, I'm looking to you. What am I trying to say? Yeah. It makes it cloudy. However, when you're making a stock, you want to get it up to the first boil, and then as soon as it starts to boil, you drop it down so that it simmers, and it should cook like this. The longer it cooks like that, the more flavor you're going to get out of the ingredients. Okay? So that way you won't have a cloudy broth. So they decided that is the best way to cook soup or broth. So their soup button, that's how it will cook your soup. It will keep it at a slow cook. It'll heat up slower when it reaches pressure, okay, so that you'll have less chances of it being cloudy. Okay, so that's one button. And in this book, she has an amazing outline, not only for the keto diet, but for the Instant Pot, which is great. So then there is, the default on all of these for your pressure cooking is high. When would you pressure cook at low? Okay. I haven't yet done that, but when you do yogurt, it doesn't even do pressure cooking. So, that's got its own button. So I haven't yet experimented that, but so you know, it will always default to high, so you don't have to adjust that, okay? All right, so can you see this now? This is starting to come up to pressure, all right? The steam button. So there is a steam button on these, and so that will heat up very quickly. You will always use a trivet in that case because it'll get really hot on the bottom really fast, and most often you will use that for vegetables. Because remember, we don't want the vegetables to be in there for too long. So you're generally using very little water. You're just using the 1 cup of water. It's not that you're cooking vegetables. Like in this, we had a can of something, and we needed the chicken to produce some liquid. So, and it's in seasoning, so it's all together. Vegetables are generally steamed without anything. So you can get them to, the steam will heat it up very fast, and then when you release the pressure, you'll do that quick release to get it out of there, okay? Do you have to use the steam setting? No, you don't. In fact, that one had a vegetable setting on it, and these, I don't think they have a vegetable setting necessarily, so they just have the steam, so you can use it for that, okay? Then there's the yogurt setting. I have made yogurt a few times, and you know, we really like it. It seems to be milder than the yogurt at the grocery store because it doesn't come under pressure. Like this particular Instant Pot actually came with a glass lid if you want to use it for the slow cooker. These do not. They come with their lid like this, but if you wanted to in the yogurt, you could put another lid on top. It just so you know, it never comes under pressure. The yogurt is a 2-part step, and beautifully this does it all for you. And the recipe book has that information on how to do it. You have to scald the milk first, and then you have to you add your starter into it, and then you get it in there and you set it for, you know, anywhere from 8 to 24 hours, depending on how you like your yogurt. So now I need to make sure there's no pressure in there because it won't open because there still is some residual pressure in here. So I put it on venting, and now that's going to come out. And then my little button is going to drop, and then it'll be time to open it. Okay? So while that's happening, so there's the yogurt, and then there's the slow cook. So you can do, like I said, you can do slow cooking. I haven't done it in there. She goes into great detail in here. Okay, so this just dropped. Okay, so now the pressure is out of there, and now, okay, because I told you there's a little button that engages, a little pin. Now, once the pressure drops, the pin disengages. Okay, and then you open this up. Now, I'm standing at the back, right? So you guys would be standing here. Now, another thing, never do this on the counter underneath your cabinets because all of that steam is going to ruin the finish on your cabinets. I put a cookie sheet on my range, and I do it right there.
Pull out your drawer, put the cookie sheet on your drawer.
Yep. Just, yeah. But I like it because I don't want it to get on the ceiling either. So, yeah. Okay. So now we open that up, and then it has a nice handy-dandy little stand right there. Okay? Now this guy is working on coming to pressure. Oh, and then there is a delay setting on some of these machines, which means you could, in the morning, put your ingredients in here and delay start for 6 or 8 hours, and it will start up on its own as long as everything's in place and ready to go. You've got to plug it in, you got to, get it ready. So you can do that.
You wouldn't do that with meat, though.
Well, you can. Here's where putting your frozen meat in here will really pay off, because this is kind of insulated, so you know it's not. You're not going to have an issue if it's sitting there all day long because it is frozen and this is somewhat insulated. Yeah. Okay. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and take out my chicken. Oops. It's fallen apart done, which is beautiful. They shrank up a lot, but I'm going to shred them. I want to walk around and show you how much liquid is in here so you can see.
Is that pan hot?
It is, but I have pretty tough fingers, but I've got a long way to go, so I will take this. Okay, so the chicken gives off a lot of liquid. Now that's something also to keep in mind when you buy chicken from the grocery store. There's chicken breasts, they pump a lot of water into them, and in a lot of cases a saline solution. So, you know, if you are, you know, concerned about getting really good quality, you want to buy chicken that has no saline or water pumped into it. But it will still give off water, right? Because meat still has water. All right? Now, what we're going to do is we're going to, remember I told you this is a butter chicken, right? So I want to finish this with my butter and then the cream. So here I've got, okay, so that just came to pressure. Has this started to? Okay. See, it's so nice when everything's working out. It's tough when you're in a panic. All right, so now I'm going to take my immersion blender and I'm going to puree. I'm making my sauce for my buttered chicken. Now, just, you know, pureeing this will help to thicken it up, but we're going to add the butter to this, and this is where the sauce has, this is the magic of a butter chicken sauce. So when you want to emulsify a sauce or to give it a thickening quality, you need to let your sauce cool for about a minute or so, which, you know, when I walked it around, we let it cool down a bit. I'm going to finish this by putting in some more of the garam masala as a finishing flavoring. What's happened here? 4 minutes remaining. Okay, I just heard a beeps. So that one is starting to count down now. Okay, so the garam masala is in here, and then I'm going to add in my butter. I always use this unsalted butter, okay? So I'm going to add that in and just gently stir it to melt the butter, and then I will finish it with the heavy cream. Is there anyone here who absolutely hates cilantro?
I'm allergic to it.
Are you really? Oh, well, I'm not going to use it then.
Thank you. Or I just won't have it, it's fine. Because I've made buttered chicken.
Is it spicy?
Hmm?
No.
No.
Common parsley.
How about if I chopped it and put it on the side?
Yeah,
You
that's
can put-
great.
I've had buttered chicken before, so you can put it in for everyone else.
Are you sure you don't want to try my butter? How about you?
Some, I really can't eat it. It doesn't matter.
I'll put it on the side. It doesn't matter. Yeah, I think some people will take it and some won't. Okay, so melting the butter. So now it's made this wonderful velvety sauce, and then I'm going to add in some heavy cream. You could use, you know, coconut milk if you wanted to, but we're just going to finish this with a little bit of heavy cream. Let me see how much it calls for. About half a cup. And then I'm just going to break this up. Again, I'm breaking it up just so everybody can have some, but if I were to serve this at home, you wouldn't have to break it up like this. But it's wonderful how, this just cooks it, and it's just so easy. Okay. And I'll just chop up the cilantro to serve on the side. You could also, if you are somebody who likes mint or basil or something, you could do that instead. That would be an interesting flavor combination. Oops. Okay. And then just before we're ready to serve it, I'll just take a little taste just to make make sure the seasoning is there. This one. Okay, so we're going to let this go manual for 4 minutes. So if you will let me know this time, because it's a little more critical on this, right? Because I don't want to overcook the rice. Just let me know. And hopefully, I'll have, because I tried it today, and, that was the time that I figured. So we'll see if I was right. Because it's nice, because the more experience you have, then you can really start playing with different combinations. Now, say I wanted to do, say I was cooking the butternut squash, and I wanted to cook peas, right? Well, peas take very little time, so I would use frozen peas. Put them in frozen with my butternut squash, and then those two would work well together, right? So again, you want to put the longest cooking item on the bottom and the shortest cooking item on the top. And depending on how much time that shortest cooking item normally takes, you either cover it or you leave it open, you raise it higher up off the bottom, all of that. All right, so there's the cilantro. Okay, and I'm going to move, this is my spice box, so I always like to just leave my teaspoon measure in there so I don't have to go searching for one every time. We have the butter chicken all set. I also wanted to show you. So say you have only, so say you can't find it, or these are, you're doing pot and pot, and this has to stay on the bottom, but you've got something else you want to lift out. So you can make your own sling, which will help you to lift things. So like I've done cauliflower. I cook my cauliflower whole. So I put it on this, and I lower it into the pot. And then I just fold it over and cook with it like that. When it's done, I just unfold it and lift my cauliflower right out. So you can make your own. My whole cauliflower, usually between 4 and 5 minutes, depending on how densely it's packed. And then the great thing is you bring it onto your cutting board and you just slice it into slices, and it completely falls apart, like in florets. That's why and the florets, if I cut it apart into florets to cook in the first place, it could be mushy, because they cook very quickly. But you would know that, right? So you would have a setting for that. You would know, okay, cut into florets, it takes only 2 minutes. You would know that, okay, by practicing. Okay, so where are we here?
This is 3 minutes.
Okay, so this should be done. See? Because that came to pressure, right?
Yeah.
It was counted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then it turned to 66.
Okay, so that meant it was done. See, this one is so much more straightforward than this to me. But I've got to get this the steam out of here. And this here, tell me again. 3. Okay. Okay, so I'm checking to see if I like how much the squash is done. It's at 4? Yeah. Okay, so we're going to vent this. All right, now you see how it kind of, because I'm standing at the back. So these are all tipped to the back. That's why you stand in front. It's just how I like it. I like it with a little bite, not mushy, okay? So, spill that out. And, I did. Yep, on Amazon. There were a lot to choose from. So I'm just going to cut these into pieces. If you Google or if you do in a search Instant Pot accessories, you'll just be like glued to your computer screen all night. All right, I'm just going to cut these up. I was trying to be nice and even, but just want to make sure everybody gets a little taste of everything. Now, I brought for this, you can just salt and pepper this. You could put, butter on it. You could put that now or later sauce. I made my own rosemary salt this summer, so I'm just going to sprinkle a little of that on there. No rosemary? Oh, good. Don't you love rosemary?
I do like it. How do you make rosemary sauce?
This recipe has you take 1 cup of rosemary leaves and 1 cup of kosher salt and put them in a food processor for you really go at it. And then you add 3 more cups of salt to that mixture. So what you're doing is you're getting the rosemary oils to coat the salt that you're processing them with. Okay, so this is done.
Would you muddle it first, the rosemary?
You don't have to.
You don't have to dissolve into that.
Right. Okay, this is the big unknown, right?
About the lavender. Do you use just the leaves or the leaves and the flowers?
Good question. Just the flowers.
Oh.
Yes. Yeah. The leaves are not for culinary purposes. If you've had them, I don't think they're not poisonous. It's just that the real uses of the flower. Yeah. Okay. So, so far, I'm pretty happy with what I'm seeing. Do you want to see? Okay. All right. So the rice is wonderful. This is a basmati rice, which basmati rice does not, it falls apart better. So it's more of once it's cooked, individual grains as opposed to like a sticky rice. You could choose to cook this less or more. It's entirely up to you. I'm looking for my salt. Just to give it a little salt so you all can have a little bit of that. And then we have our lentils. So let me show you that. Now I'm so pleased with this. Okay, so they're holding together really nicely. Now, today when I cooked them, they had a little bit of extra water with them, so it was advised to store them in the water so they don't dry out, and they'll absorb it. But you see how these hold together better than the brown ones that you buy. And I found that Bob's Red Mill has they have a nice package. And you can do, you could mix. So I made this today, this combination today, and I mixed the two together, and I froze them because I take them to my kids. They're both cooking for themselves, so when I try out a recipe, then I freeze it and I take it to them, and they're all set. That's how I get mom points. Okay, so I'm just going to taste everything just to make sure it's seasoned enough. Oh, swell. Good. Very aromatic on the lavender. You'll like that.